On this very historic deal, we talked about how big of this is really going to be for the global economy. How significant is this in your eyes?
Oh, this is big. It's important, no doubt about that. But it's got a long way to go yet. They've signed up a deal, but we've got to see text. And then it's going to spend probably quite a noisy up to a year going around legislatures around all the different 12 countries. So we're not there yet, but it's the biggest thing since the Uruguay round, I would think.
Yeah, you know, this is the biggest trade deal we've seen since the NAFTA agreement, which also faced quite a bit of opposition at that time. How is Congress particularly going to, and the president going to actually try to combat some of these critics? Because we've seen them lining up from both sides.
Well, it's always difficult, a trade deal like this, but basically it can hurt some specific industries and some specific workforces, but it's likely to be very positive in a much broader sense. And of course, it's going to help consumers, and that's the thing that's always quite hard to get across. But that's up to legislators to do that.
Yeah, it seems like there's a kind of a mixed bag when it comes to certain sectors of this trade deal. What about the concerns for American profits? I mean, we heard from Ford saying that there just needs to be more regulations when it comes to currencies because the Japanese car makers seem to be benefiting from the weaker yen. Should there be more enforcement on that front?
Not through a trade agreement like this. That was never going to happen. It's not there for currency control or currency agreement. That should be happening through the IMF and through the world's FX markets, as it has. And of course, different companies are hurt and helped at various times in the cycle, but this isn't going to affect that.
All right. Well, when it comes to, you know, the process, you know, of other trade deals as well, I mean, you mentioned here completing their domestic ratification process for the WTO with this trade facilitation agreement. Is that going to, this recent development in the TPP, going to help expedite that?
Well, I think what's really been happening is it's recognised that it's very difficult to progress multilaterally through the WTO. So we've got this TPP agreement, and then amongst East Asian and some other countries, we've also got the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, where there's an attempt to try and get something signed by the end of this year. And actually in APEC, we don't want to see one going off as a sort of rich man's club and the other going off as a developing economy club. We want to see them coming together. So we're doing a study for what might come after all of this, which is free trade area for Asia and the Pacific. So it's an untidy world, and that's the way we've just got to operate. But this will probably give a competitive boost to some of these other agreements and possibly the Atlantic TTIP as well.
Alan, real quickly here, you know, we talked about some of the sectors, some of the very thorny issues when you talk about autos, dairy, intellectual property, which kind of ended up being some of the last sticking issues in the final hour. What have you heard in terms of the response from the business community on these sectors?
Well, I mean, you know there's been quite a bit of objection around some parts of the business community, but we haven't seen the text yet. So it's really too early to know what the responses should be in all of this. This agreement, in principle, was going to be big. It got US, Japan and others together for the first time. In principle, it should also have been a way to start moving agricultural trade liberalisation, which has just been very slow around the world. I'm not sure it's actually achieving that. And then thirdly, these new generation issues, and that's where we will look at all the text to see if this is really setting a standard for the future.